Okay, so first thing I'm going to point out, I am still somewhat sick, so if I sound funny throughout this video, that's entirely why. I might start looking more and more disheveled as the video goes on as well because of that. Zur-En-Arrh, or if you aren't aware of him, Batman, if he was slapped with a Robin-like color palette, is possibly one of the most interesting and odd versions of Batman to exist. At least by my own opinion. You see, he made his first appearance all the way back in 1958 in the 113th issue of Batman as an alien who was so fascinated by the Batman of Earth that he became the Batman to his own home planet of Zur-En-Arrh, which was also labeled Planet X because there was a lot of stuff that was just labeled something X back in those comic books, which is also why he would be called the Zur-En-Arrh Batman. But that story changed dramatically in 2008 and was more recently evolved into something even more insane. But before I get into that though, I do want to talk a bit more about the original version. In the issue named Batman, the Superman of Planet X, Bruce Wayne, seemingly in some kind of trance, goes on a flight over Gotham in the Batplane, but suddenly appears on the planet Zur-En-Arrh without memory of even getting there. This is where we first meet the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. Turns out Bruce was teleported from Gotham to this planet. Doesn't explain where the Batplane went though, as he showed up without it. Kinda worried about where that's going. And the alien Batman, whose real name is Talano, explains to the Caped Crusader how he's inspired him to be the Batman of his world, showing off some space-age bat vehicles and tech that I couldn't even try to explain other than being like an EMP. It's called a bat radio. I think that's how it's pronounced. Zur-En-Arrh explains that he brought Batman to his planet to help fight off its invaders. Of course, Bruce is a little confused as to why he picked him, as he is just a dude, and all this high-tech stuff is actually way more advanced than he himself is. But, you know, there's a reason why the comic book is called the Superman of Planet X, as it seems that Earthlings on the planet of Zur-En-Arrh actually possess the abilities that Kryptonians would on Earth, being bulletproof and being capable of flight and the such. So obviously Batman understood a bit better as to why he was brought here now. After defeating the enemy force, Talano would send Batman home, thankfully right back into the seat of the Batplane as if he was only gone for mere seconds. I'd like to say he just had a little risky bat nap in the Batplane, and had one hell of a bat dream, but he was sent home with the EMP device thing, the bat radio, as a gift. So 50s Batman canonically met an alien version of himself, which was really weird, but there was honestly a lot of different 50s versions of himself. After that, that was pretty much it. The only instances of the Zur-En-Arrh Batman after this in the comics would be subtle references within graffiti that would show up in the background, and maybe a side joke by Batmite for some reason. But of course, this alien fan version of Zur-En-Arrh wouldn't just be limited to comic books. In the animated Batman series, Batman the Brave and the Bold, specifically Season 2, Episode 9, the story of Zur-En-Arrh would be reprised nearly beat for beat. I say nearly, as it isn't one-to-one with the comic book version. This time, Batman is already in space, stopping some interstellar crooks when he's pulled into a wormhole, popping out on the planet Zur-En-Arrh. Its city, Gothtropolis, somehow looking worse than Gotham, which I didn't think was possible. Immediately, he'd save a couple and their child from a dude who looks eerily like Joe Chill. They love making references back to Batman's origins. This is where Batman would learn that his strength had been increased after turning a batarang into a tiny cannonball, except he initially thinks that the buildings were just made of absolute trash. Zur-En-Arrh Batman would appear, showing off a little with the bat radio again, taking out the totally not Joe Chill, and the two would properly meet. Now, unlike the original comic book version, who fanboyed over Batman, this Zur-En-Arrh Batman literally just so happened to also become Batman. He had no clue who Batman was beforehand, in a city that was also similarly named towards Gotham. I guess in an infinite amount of universes and dimensions, it makes sense that it could happen, but Batman of Earth unintentionally landing there is some crazy odds. The big bad would still be similar in the comic book as well, but this time it was a robot army controlled by a man named Rothol, or Rothel. I don't know how to pronounce it. It is essentially Luthor spelled backwards, so it's a little hard for me to pronounce. So yeah, it's just Lex Luthor in all honesty. We continue to learn of Earth Batman's new strength, speed, and invulnerability as he absolutely demolishes a few robots and saves a reporter. So the story more or less follows the comic, but now Zur-En-Arrh is getting a little jealous and protective of the city as he is meant to be the city's main hero. Which makes sense because if Superman just showed up in Gotham one day and became like the main hero of Gotham, similarly dressing up as Batman, and just wiping out his villains like butter on toast, I imagine he would also be a little bit annoyed. Also, funny side note, Zur-En-Arrh Batman has a butler called Alpha Red. I also have a robot body double called Valen 9 who does all of my scripts. Solano as a character is also given a bit more meat to his story bones as well, working at the solar cycle as a reporter, so more or less he's Batman if his civilian life was Clark Kent. Of course, a super anything should have kryptonite, and so Super Batman is weak to quartz. Kinda glad they didn't make up another fictional mineral, but it really? Quartz? Obviously Zur-En-Arrh Batman would save the day, as it'd be messed up if Bruce just took over as a Superman for Gothtropolis forever and put Talano out of the hero game. And Green Arrow, who was at the start of the episode, would somehow learn how to make wormholes and bring Batman back to Gotham. I don't know how he did that, but it's a weekly cartoon more intended for kids, so I won't question it. The next appearance of the Zur-En-Arrh suit actually has nothing to do with the alien planet, and actually follows the newer depiction of the character. This was in the animated movie Batman Death in the Family. Editor's note, the YouTube version of the Death in the Family movie has like none of the interactive elements to it. It is literally just half an hour of one of the plot lines cramped down into a mini movie. So if you're going to watch it, please do try to find it on DVD. I don't have it on DVD, so I can't use any of its footage as like background referencing video, but yeah, don't buy it on YouTube unless you want a 30-minute rendition of just the story of Jason Todd, which I thought was a one plotline movie about the passing of Jason Todd, and it can be, but it's actually intended as an interactive experience where the viewer can actually make some choices and decide the outcome of the movie based on their choices. I had no clue that that was a thing. If I had known that beforehand, I would have watched the hell out of it sooner, because I had no clue that that's what the movie was like. Back to Zur-En-Arrh though, during one of the movie's plot lines, Batman can perish due to saving Jason from the Joker, and later on, after taking out many criminals and potentially the Joker, Jason would become a fugitive from the law, where Talia al Ghul would find him and introduce him to a resurrected Batman, adorned in the Zur-En-Arrh Batman suit. The reason that is, by the way, is that he was revived in this thing called a Lazarus Pit. In DC Comics, it can revive people at the sacrifice of their sanity. Sometimes it's slow, or in this case, it just makes Batman say one thing: Zur-En-Arrh. This Zur-En-Arrh would fight Jason at Talia's command, and it's up to the viewer whether Jason tries to end him or save him. Spoilers, by the way, ending him would make Bruce detonate a hidden explosive that takes all three of them out, and if he tries to save him, he would lock up Zur-En-Arrh Batman into the Batcave, and the rest of the Bat family would work to try and heal him. They learned that the phrase Zur-En-Arrh was actually a line his father said before he was taken from him. The sad thing is they would probably throw someone like Zorro in Arkham. This was said to him, obviously, before they got shot down after watching a movie that has Zorro in it. I forget which movie it is exactly, but it's meant to be the movie that happens before the night in Crime Alley where he becomes Batman. Now, of course, you take Zorro in Arkham, and if you try and like slur it through your words a little bit, it turns into Zur-En-Arrh. Zorro in Arkham, Zur-En-Arrh. It's a stretch. I think they were just trying to reuse it and make it make sense. And it kind of does. It's just a bit weird. But with the context of the 2008 return of the character, we learn that the personality wasn't just due to the resurrected Wayne's insanity. Now, I'm going to be real with you. I cannot find the 2008 comic book anywhere. So I'm using a lot of wiki synopsises to, like, verify my sources. So if I'm not entirely correct, please do forgive me. In Batman's past, he worked alongside a psychiatrist named Simon Hurt to create a post-hypnotic trigger that would activate by the phrase Zur-En-Arrh, again being a mishearing of his father's last words. During the Batman R.I.P. storyline, Dr. Hurt would work with the big bad, Black Glove, to take down Batman and his allies. Hurt would place the trigger word around Gotham in the form of graffiti, alongside using very specific and unmoral medication, if you catch my drift, to bring the Zur-En-Arrh personality to the surface. Thankfully, Bruce was still in control, but he forgot himself entirely. He would be puppeted by the Zur-En-Arrh personality, with the only thing stopping him from going over the edge being his own subconscious, which would actually take the form of Batmite. The Zur-En-Arrh personality wouldn't get to come out entirely, of course, but Bruce would still wear the colourful suit and act a little over the top, doing a little bit too much. So thinking back on the Death in the Family movie, when Batman was resurrected and potentially pushed to insanity, his backup personality kicked in and took control, but was potentially damaged by the Lazarus Pit, which is why he was so odd and repeating the trigger word over and over again. His original personality being able to return would be iffy, as I imagine that the Zur personality took full control and kicked Bruce out since he technically had passed away. But now we jump to 2022, and so far Zur-En-Arrh has been nothing but referenced. A suit in LEGO Batman 3, a suit in Arkham Knight, which may have been playing in the background every now and again in this video, depending on how I do the editing. And the color scheme of the suit shows up in Injustice 2 as a color palette swap thing for Batman. But the character itself was coming back to the main run of comics in a major way. If you know Batman, you know that he creates a failsafe for everyone he meets, just in case they become evil. But what you might not know is that he's included himself on that list as well. But how could Bruce make a failsafe against an evil version of himself without still knowing all its potential weaknesses? Well, you get your alternate personality to make it for you, and of course you forget about it completely afterwards. You see, the failsafe against Batman was designed to activate if there was ever a ton of news headlines that pop up saying that Batman had turned bad, like he might have taken a life or something along the lines of that. And it was a robot that could hunt down and end the world's greatest detective. Its name, Failsafe. During the 2016 run of Batman, issue 126, Batman would vaguely remember something about the robot as it hunted him, being activated by headlines of Batman taking a life and the such, but he couldn't place it. But he never forgets anything, so he quickly connected the dots and allowed Zur-En-Arrh to take the wheel, as he immediately understood that he was probably the one who made it, so he'll probably be the only one who knows how to take it down. He wears the colourful Zur-En-Arrh suit, except now it's a bit of a different design in comparison to the classic design, and he's been tasked with taking out Failsafe. Zur-Batman would act a lot like Adam West's Batman, saying chum and the such, as well as having the half moon eyes rather than the sharp triangle Batman eyes that he usually has. He would share that he was created to defend against psychological attacks, and admit that he built the failsafe, but he supposedly doesn't remember how to stop it either, as he also erased his memory of it, making it a failsafe with no weakness. What's odd is that Zur-Batman is designed to be a Batman without Bruce Wayne's morality, and yet he still does stuff like protect Tim, and even stops a portrait of Alfred from being damaged. So I guess Bruce is still kicking in there somewhere, as he would take back control of his body mid-fight. He had nearly lost, but Superman and some other League members showed up just in time. Of course, you would think that Superman would just fly over and rip the robot in half, but Failsafe is designed for anything Batman can throw at him, including the Justice League. Now, of course, the Failsafe story would continue with one pretty badass moment where Batman managed to survive re-entering the Earth's atmosphere from the moon. Pretty much nothing but his suit and some scraps, as well as an oxygen tank. Batman would also jump alternate realities for a short time, and unbeknownst to him, he was unintentionally allowing Zur-Batman to interact with tons of other versions of Zur-Batman. I don't know how that worked, I'm assuming it's just because they share the same brain. That was revealed at the end of issue 135 though. Also, this weirdly implies that Arkham Batman actually has a Zur-En-Arrh personality too, or at least one of the versions of the Arkham Batman. Would have been neat if Joker had made a point about it, but I don't think he does, because the game was made in 2015 and this comic was made in like 2022. The following issue would hint at Zur attempting to take over Bruce's body, as he wants to be the one true Batman. We learn that Zur-En-Arrh had programmed Failsafe with a larger plan in mind. He was to end Batman, and I actually mean that as in like fake end, not like dodging YouTube end, and for Failsafe to wait for his safe return. And it keeps hinting that Zur-Batman had done something in relation to Robin that Failsafe considered too far even for Batman. Later on, Bruce would find out that someone bought the mansion above the Batcave. He went to destroy the cave to protect his secret, of course, but Zur manages to convince him partially not to, almost like he's hiding something within the cave. Batman would make actions that Bruce wouldn't over time, Zur-En-Arrh potentially affecting his train of thought and his actions. One of those things being kidnapping Jason and more or less brainwashing him into being in constant fear, which, if you know Jason, is one hell of a thing to do to him considering his past. He would actively push his family away from him, believing they would be hurt by his mission against crime. But in reality, it was probably manipulation by Zur to make him lean closer to the identity of Batman so he could take over with more ease later on. Bruce would also go into hiding, more or less removing his civilian side, with the most that showed being a random man living in a little apartment in Gotham who hunts the Joker, which also returned at this point. It's very weird and hard to explain, but it was actually the Joker that made Zur-En-Arrh come through, taunting him to come out and end him. That was when Zur-En-Arrh's plan truly began, as Bruce would have to fight the many multiversal Zur-Batman inside of his own head. They saw themselves as the stronger Batmen, to be rid of the found families and to build an army of themselves who could fix the multiverse. Batman would fight the Zurs, beating almost all of them, save for his own, of course. He would wake up after the mental fight to find that Zur-En-Arrh and the other Zur-Batmen had left his mind, Using the Terminus project, he placed his persona directly into Failsafe, giving Zur-En-Arrh his own body. The Terminus project was intended for when Batman got old in Bruce's body, but due to Bruce fighting his control consistently, he decided to use it early. So now you have the dangerous mind of Zur-En-Arrh, plus however many versions of himself that are in there, in the body of a machine that could take down the entire Justice League if it wished. This is obviously the most dangerous version of Zur-En-Arrh, but I do want to stop there for his story, as he's slowly becoming less like Zur-En-Arrh at this point, more or less disconnected from Batman. And I don't want to spoil any further plot for the comics, so I do suggest that you read them if you want. It does get a little bit crazy. I'm kind of glad that something like Zur-En-Arrh doesn't actually exist though. In both cases, creating a false personality intentionally is wild, and having an alien fanboy is even wilder. If it isn't evidently obvious, this version of Zur-En-Arrh is quite different from the alien origins that we started with. Still becoming a whole separate character, but now he's a robot and a duplicate personality of Bruce Wayne instead of some alien dude from Planet X. But what's interesting is how much this changed the way people perceive this character. You see, most of Batman's variations from the 50s weren't intended to be long-term at all. They're just meant to be one-off gags for the week. A few of them stuck out and would be referenced every now and again, but most of the time it was just for, again, that week's comic book. Same went for Zur-En-Arrh. He's just meant to be the joke of the week. Not meant to be a character to take seriously and very one-off. The first impression of Tolano's Zur-En-Arrh is an odd alien fanboy of Batman who couldn't deal with a small invasion. But after the 2008 rewriting, Zur-En-Arrh becomes a much darker and dangerous character. If you were to have experienced this new Zur-En-Arrh before the classic one, then you might think that the original one was just a straight-up joke. Tolano, at least in the Brave and the Bold series, was intended as a way to teach Batman and the viewer that you shouldn't take what you have for granted, especially if you worked for it. Bruce worked to become the hero that he is. His brooding strength, high-level intelligence, fighting skill, and powerful technology were thanks to his hard work. So him getting these immense Superman-like powers and overusing them was a way to show that he can be completely self-made, but sometimes an unexpected gift can completely change us, and it's up to us to make sure that we stick to our tracks. The gift is great, but that shouldn't change how we act with it. You worked hard to be who you are today. Don't lose sight of that.
Frankly, it's a relief not to have them. It's too easy to depend on them and forget.
What got you where you are?
Classic Zur-En-Arrh, or more accurately its rework in the cartoons, was a way to teach us to appreciate what we have, and weirdly enough, the Zur-En-Arrh of today teaches us that too. But he's nothing like classic Zur-En-Arrh. How can it have the same message? You may be asking. Let me explain. Modern day Batman was created as nothing but a just-in-case plan by Bruce Wayne, a second personality in case Batman ever suffered from some form of mental attack. But it was made during a time where Bruce was incredibly deep into his war on crime, making it his only mission in life and barely caring for the very name Bruce Wayne, let alone the life that stood behind the name. But the identity sat silently, basically unused as Bruce continued on. He allowed himself to love, he grew to see his allies as family, and became kinder. So when the identity deep inside him got a chance to take the wheel once again, he fell right back into the main mission Batman, calling his sons and daughters as nothing but soldiers in his war against crime. It was only Bruce's love for his family that he fought against Zur-En-Arrh. Of course, Zur would use this to manipulate him and get him to push himself from his family, but it does teach us that there are things that we should appreciate. People or things that we have now that we didn't have in the past. These things make us the people we are today, because without it, we could end up in red and yellow, calling adoptive children soldiers and placing our minds in robot bodies. Of course, my opinion on Zur-En-Arrh is that he is a great representation of reusing old ideas in comic books. Yes, it is a complete rewriting of the character, with the only details being kept being the suit and the bat radio. But it's done in a way that feels right. Zur-En-Arrh's suit is also supposed to show the larger amount of bravery Batman has. Batman usually hides in darkness with his usual suit to ensure he has the upper hand, but Zur-En-Arrh believes he can beat anything or anyone, and so he doesn't care for the darkness. In fact, he welcomes the challenge, wearing the brightest thing possible to catch their attention. Zur-En-Arrh is an oddity, a character made as a one-off adventure of the week for Batman, hiding under the radar for years, as most people wouldn't know what the hell you're talking about when you say Zur-En-Arrh. But now he holds a pretty strong position in the DC universe, being a potential psycho version of Batman, just sitting in his own mind, waiting for the day he can be in control and take care of crime permanently. That's all I have to say about the character. I do want to hear what your opinions are of the character in the comment section down below, be it of his original story, new story, or if you just want to talk about his character design being so strong. And again, I'm still sick, so yeah, I didn't realize, but it turns out being able to taste food, I'm not going to take that for granted. I haven't been able to taste anything that I've been eating recently, and it's such a dull thing. You'd never appreciate the taste of food until it's taken from you. As I may have said last week, I'll be changing my uploads to be fortnightly, so once every 2 weeks, unlike what happened with me being sick last week, I may stream or something in between the weeks, or we might just go along without an upload. We'll see how this goes first. If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe. While you're down there, you may as well like the video as it helps push in the algorithm for others to see. I'll see you all next week, and as always, not sponsored. Thank you to my members, Tina Buttercup, Crystal Kensbit, Jasmine Wilson, Wilburflight, and Nugsy1.